Dennis, I'd like your perspective on whether you think Hitler was far right or was actually a far left ideologue. Okay, Hitler was left wing in that he believed in socialism. Remember, Nazism is National Socialism. Very few people know that, especially if you go to college where you don't learn much. But that is what Nazism stands for, National Socialism.
Dennis Prager, a prominent American conservative and political commentator, recently shed light on the political beliefs that shaped one of history's most infamous figures, Adolf Hitler. Prager, known for his in-depth commentary on historical and political subjects, delved into Hitler's true ideology, exploring the beliefs and actions that guided his rise to power and ultimately led to the atrocities of the Nazi regime. Adolf Hitler's political views were shaped during the tumultuous years of his youth. Growing up in Austria, Hitler was exposed to a combination of nationalist and anti-Semitic ideologies that would later form the backbone of his political career. These ideas were promoted by the populist movement in Vienna, notably through figures like Mayor Karl Lueger, whose anti-Semitic rhetoric profoundly impacted Hitler's worldview. Prager notes that during this period, Hitler became deeply influenced by the work of race theorists such as Houston Stewart Chamberlain, who argued that the Aryan race was superior to others, and by political ideologies that advocated for the unification of all German-speaking peoples under one nation. This vision of a greater Germany would become a central theme in Hitler's future political actions. Perhaps the most central and infamous aspect of Hitler's ideology was his extreme anti-Semitism. As Prager emphasizes, Hitler viewed Jews not only as a racial threat, but also as an existential enemy of the German people. This deeply ingrained hatred of Jews was evident in his seminal work Mein Kampf, in which he outlined his belief that Jews were responsible for the destruction of Germany's moral and cultural fabric. In Mein Kampf, Hitler makes it clear that he considered Jews to be a parasitic race, threatening to dilute the purity of the Aryan race. Prager highlights how this belief formed the basis for Hitler's policies, including the horrific acts of violence that would later be carried out under the Nazi regime. Hitler's view of Jews as vermin and his desire to exterminate them would ultimately culminate in the Holocaust, the systematic murder of 6 million Jews. Another central tenet of Hitler's political ideology, as discussed by Prager, was the concept of Lebensraum, or living space.
In that sense, it was left-wing, but it was not left-wing in another sense. The left divided the world by class. That's the classic Marxist division of the world, class, the proletariat and the oppressor, if you will. Whereas Hitler divided the world by race. Race is not a left-wing or a right-wing value.
This idea called for the expansion of Germany into Eastern Europe, particularly into Soviet Russia, to secure more territory for the Aryan race. Hitler believed that Germany's survival depended on conquering these territories, which were home to what he considered inferior races, such as Slavs and Jews. Prager explains that Hitler's expansionist policies were directly tied to his racial beliefs. He argued that the land in the East, especially the fertile plains of Ukraine and Russia, should be taken from the inferior populations and given to Germans. This notion of territorial expansion would lead to one of the most brutal campaigns in history, the invasion of the Soviet Union in 1941, known as Operation Barbarossa. Hitler's disdain for both communism and Slavs was another key component of his political beliefs. Prager explains how Hitler viewed communism as a Jewish conspiracy aimed at subjugating the German people. This ideological stance, combined with his anti-Slavic sentiments, justified his aggressive policies towards Eastern Europe and his eventual invasion of the Soviet Union. For Hitler, the Bolshevik Revolution and the rise of communism were directly linked to Jewish influence. He saw communism not as a working-class movement, but as a tool used by Jews to control and weaken the German nation. This belief would lead to the brutal suppression of communists in Nazi-occupied territories and the eventual extermination of millions of Jews and Slavs in the East. One of the most defining aspects of Hitler's regime, as Prager points out, was the Führerprinzip, or the leader principle. This concept placed Hitler at the center of all power in Germany, asserting that all subordinates must obey the leader without question. The Führerprinzip was not just a political doctrine, but a personal one for Hitler, who believed that he embodied the will of the German people. Prager notes that this belief in absolute authority allowed Hitler to consolidate power quickly once he became Chancellor of Germany.
Whereas Hitler divided the world by race. Race is not a left-wing or a right-wing value. It has become a left-wing value in the last 25 years in the West.
It also laid the groundwork for the totalitarian state he would build, where dissent was crushed and loyalty to the leader was paramount. Prager also delves into Hitler's contempt for democracy and socialism. Hitler viewed democracy as a system that allowed for mob rule, where the will of the people was dictated by the masses rather than a strong leader. He believed that democracy was inherently flawed and that only a single powerful leader could guide the nation to greatness. Hitler's rejection of democracy extended to his views on socialism. While the Nazi Party's name included the term socialist, Prager explains that Hitler's socialism was entirely different from the Marxist ideology espoused by the Soviet Union.
All of a sudden, race matters incredibly. The left has actually, in some ways, abandoned classic Marxist division by class and now made it by race. But race was neither left nor right until this moment. It is not a right-wing value.
Hitler was opposed to the idea of class struggle and believed that the state should be governed by a single unified racial group, the Aryans. For him, the true socialism was about the unity and superiority of the German race, not economic equality. Prager concludes his analysis by emphasizing that Adolf Hitler's political beliefs were built upon a foundation of racial superiority, anti-Semitism, and totalitarianism. Hitler's vision of the world was one where Germany dominated Europe and where Jews, Slavs, and communists were either eliminated or subjugated.
I mean, I live among people on the right. None of them, not one person I know is a racist. They find the idea preposterous. So it's not right to say that he was right-wing, and it's not right to say he was only left-wing. He was partially left-wing. And by the way, he hated capitalism, hated it. I just read a new biography of Hitler, and that was a major part of the biography, how much the man hated capitalism.
Ultimately, Hitler's political philosophy was one of unrelenting aggression and extreme nationalism. His belief in the need for racial purity, territorial expansion, and the destruction of his perceived enemies led to the catastrophic consequences of World War II and the Holocaust. As Prager makes clear, understanding Hitler's true political beliefs is crucial to understanding the depths of his cruelty and the scale of the atrocities committed under his regime. Through Prager's insights, we are reminded of the dangers of unchecked ideological extremism and the devastating consequences of a leader who can manipulate a nation's collective will for nefarious purposes. As we come to the end of this deep dive into Adolf Hitler's political beliefs, it's hard not to be struck by the chilling combination of his extremist views and the terrifying power he wielded. From the racial purity he demanded to the unrelenting expansion of German territory, Hitler's ideology was a roadmap to destruction, one that led to the devastation of entire populations, the collapse of a nation, and the death of millions. But what does this mean for us today? Are there lessons to be learned from the rise of a figure like Hitler, someone whose political beliefs were grounded in hatred, division, and domination? In a world still grappling with issues of nationalism, race, and power, it's crucial that we examine the roots of such ideologies, not just to understand the past, but to ensure we don't repeat its darkest chapters. Think about it. How do we allow extremist ideas to fester in societies that claim to embrace diversity and freedom? And what role do we, as individuals and as a collective, play in preventing such destructive ideologies from taking root? It's up to all of us to keep the lessons of history alive, to engage in conversations that matter, and to recognize when rhetoric and policy veer into dangerous territory. Now, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Do you think there are any similarities between Hitler's political beliefs and some of the ideologies we see today? Drop your comments below and let's keep this conversation going. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss an update. Together, let's continue to educate ourselves and push for a better, more inclusive world. See you in the next video.